What happens when you leave everything behind but never leave your culture? Today, more than 800,000 people of Nicaraguan heritage call the United States home, and nearly 40% live in Florida, where communities like Sweetwater, known as Little Managua, have become a vibrant part of South Florida. My next guest has spent decades documenting the people, the history, and the culture. He's an award-winning journalist. Yvonne Taylor, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Judy. What a pleasure to be invited to you to this show. And it's a bunch of us. We're everywhere now.
Aren't we? Yes, we are. And when we have a little bit of history growing up in the career of journalism
Yes,
many years ago, right?
exactly,
What do you recall?
We met when you were already working at the assignment desk of Univision Miami, Channel 23, and
Yes.
I was an intern. And I
Yes.
came in, and you basically were teaching me what to do, what not to do, and to be assertive, to be aggressive, and to obey everything that I had to do. And it was a great experience, absolutely. I still tell everyone, it's great to do internships because that's really when you come to terms with the fact that if this is
Yes.
what I want to pursue, if is this what I want to do, and I know the dynamics of nowadays doing an internship have changed dramatically, but I am grateful for the opportunity that I have. I did it in English and I did it in Spanish, and I did it with Univision, and there you were.
Isn't it amazing? Once the journalism bug bites you, it never lets go,
Oh
right? You
my
always keep
God.
coming back.
Exactly. Look at you.
Well, we Latinos, we love to talk and tell stories, so it's just such a natural career for us. ¿Verdad que sí, Iván?
Absolutamente,
Eh,
definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about the Nicaraguan community, because not only are you from Nicaragua, but you're an activist. You love your Nicaraguan people. You're a great representative, and you love to tell their stories. What was it growing up in Nicaragua as a Nicaraguan in South Florida during the '80s, right? When you got here, tell
During
me a little bit
yes,
about how
I
you got
came
here.
here in the 80s. It was an interesting aspect because those were the years of the Sandinista revolution, and then Ronald Reagan and the Contras. And I thought that it was so important. That was kind of like the reason what got me into journalism, because I felt that there was a need to have someone to tell our story. And there was a need for definitely showing that this community was growing. It was a community made out of exiles, which many of them would tell you, if it wasn't because of the whole political scenario, I would not have left my country, which was different to like many immigrants and very similar to Cubans. And I thought, that is probably the engine that I need to make it to television. And then I saw the falling of the Berlin Wall, and I was like, no doubt, that's what I want to do. So I noticed the community started growing. I noticed they started getting involved, but there was this sort of like lack of voices
Yes,
on television, and
Latino voices.
that get me moving until finally it happened in the late 90s.
That's right, because the truth is, a lot of people don't know. The Spanish television barely existed. I think,
Yes.
there were some stations that eventually became Univision and then Telemundo. But the reason why Spanish television became a thing is because there were so many of us coming from different countries, seeking freedom for one reason or another. So there was a demand in the marketplace, right?
And nowadays you see the strength of Spanish TV. It's amazing. It
Yes.
really is, because you even see English speaking people acknowledging the existence of English media.
It's very necessary, right? The media is very necessary, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you're asking me. The first advocate for media, for the fact of transparency, and I'm one of the people who, whenever I talk to the audience outside and they tell me about something, I always say, make sure that you know what your source is. Make
Yes.
sure you know where the facts come from. Because if there's one thing that media still upholds, is the fact that we confirm where the information is coming from, unlike social media.
The media is getting a bad rap lately, right? I think we're steering away from our journalistic integrity sometimes. How do you keep that? How do you yourself maintain that journalistic integrity?
I think that, I mean, I still hold it, and I don't know if it's because what we call old school.
Old school,
and,
true.
but to me, it's very important, first of all, that both sides of the aisle have a voice. That way, it's not just inclined to one side. Regardless of where I'm standing on the view, both sides have to present their voice. And sometimes the other side may say, no comments. And we just have to say, we reach out to whatever the other side was, and we asked them for a comment or for an interview, and they said, no comment.
Yeah.
Or we're not speaking on the fact, or we don't have that. But I always mention it because I think that is when your credibility is online, that is what makes a difference, and that is what people are seeking. Those who still believe in the media, they know that they're going to watch TV or they're going to read a newspaper or a magazine or a publication because they know that they're going to get both sides of the story and not only the one-sided thing that you get it all over with social media. So as far as like the bad rep, I don't know. It depends of who is the source who's saying that.
And journalism has definitely come a long way, right? From our Sábado Gigante days, those of us that are Latinos, that was our bread and butter on Saturdays. We used to sit down and we used to watch Sábado Gigante, and our local news, they were like our family.
Totally.
And in many ways, in some markets, those people are still, you kind of know them, like they come into your house practically through the television every day. How do you feel when people, when people on the street recognize you? Do you feel a sense of responsibility for these folks?
Huge. Definitely, without a doubt. Because see, what's interesting of like basically on what you're telling me is that those days were wonderful when we knew that people were going to sit down and watch TV, whether it was Sábado Gigante, whether it was the news, national news, but people would make the time. It's like dinner was always matched with news.
Yes.
Times have changed. So those of us that are in the industry, we also do news in a way that we know that the audience is listening, because society is so fast-paced now that people are not necessarily sitting down and watching TV, but they could be preparing dinner,
yes,
preparing things for the kids, just getting home. So I try to make my news conversational, so whoever is listening, maybe they'll make a moment and say, wait a second, what did he just say? And then they're going to look. And I think that's the challenge that we're facing nowadays, that we want to engage the audience because everyone is so busy. I mean, traffic is a big challenge. I mean, a lot of people they have not made it home by 6 o'clock or 6:30. They're still stuck in traffic.
Yeah,
so our duty is to talk to the audience without showing them, talking about the image that we have, but telling them about it. Because those who are on television are going to want to watch it, but the ones who are not, then they're going to pay attention. I think that's the big challenge now that media has.
Sometimes I wish we would just take a breath and slow down a little bit, go back to those days where we weren't doing 20 things. We could literally sit down with our family and just enjoy the moment. But even as reporters, things have changed, right? You were telling me sometimes you do stories on your cell phone.
Yes.
Even.
I think technology has changed the dynamics of the industry. And what happens is that a lot of people, and I don't need to tell you, especially the young ones, they want to get their news on the phone.
Yes, immediately.
Exactly, immediately. Or they want to know what happened just by reading 2 lines. So with that, television stations, because they're not getting as many viewers. So those of us that are in the industry, we are doing more.
Yes.
They're relying on our sources. They're relying on our connections. They're relying on us being familiar with what's happening. So it's become more as like we not necessarily bring the news, but we propose the stories that should be covered. And that is when also the duty of the journalist comes into place, of the fact that you need to be informed. You need to be informed of what's happening in your community. You need to be informed of the repercussions of anything that's happening. And at the same time, be out there, be visible, because the community is going to come to you.
Yeah, it's really amazing, because honestly, if it's important enough, the news will find you, right? You can't escape it nowadays. You can't escape it. But did you ever think, when you were growing up in Nicaragua, was coming to the United States and was being a journalist something that that you aspired to as a young kid?
I'm going to tell you something that is going to make you laugh.
Okay.
No, I did not think of that. I used to draw a lot. And I used to think that I was going to be an architect. You know, it's a kind of thing in Latin America. You grow, he's a good artist, he's a good drawer. And then puberty come along.
Yeah.
And I had bad acne. And I used to hide from the cameras. I hated to take pictures. I hated anything like that. And it's just like, how in the world would I process that I was going to work on television? But then, I started taking care of all that. But like I said, coming to the U.S. in the 80s, seeing what's happening, and then seeing all the changes that we saw with the Ronald Reagan administration, that's what really pushed me into it. But if you ask me if back then I was thinking of that, absolutely not. That was something that happened here. Back then, my vision was something else. And I used to have conversations with my dad, because my dad had his own business. It's like, oh, you need to go to school for business administration. And I thought, well, I guess I'm going to go for business administration. Yeah. But until I was here, I said, I want to be a journalist. And my dad respected my decision. And I'm thankful. I'm really thankful to that. But I think it's funny because, I mean, here I am, the prime example of somebody who did not want to be in front of the camera. And now that's my job.
You're in front of a camera. Welcome to Sabor, Freedom. Do you sometimes feel like you have two different identities? Because we are, we grew up with Latinos, but then we're in the United States of America, although Miami is a different beast, right?
Absolutely.
But do you ever struggle with that? How do you reconcile?
I'll tell you what. I like to be seen at my station at CBS Miami as the Latino reporter.
Yeah.
I like that identity because and even though we have to cover over other local news, I like the fact that they can feel that I'm going to bring them that special touch of the story. And it's funny because when something is happening in Hialeah, they're like, send him on. Because they feel like people are going to come talk to me. People are going to open up to me. I remember one time I was covering a story about a detention center in Miramar. And I was there and suddenly I went up to the lady for the food cart. And as I'm talking to her, I said, I'm from CBS Miami, blah, 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 blah. She said, your face looks familiar. And I said, yes, I used to work in Spanish media. And she said, oh my God, she tells me, yesterday your station sent someone who did not speak the language, so nobody talked to her. She said, yes. So you're gonna have an easier time. And I was like, that's true. The audience identifies with you because they feel like you're approachable.
Yes, that's right.
You're one of them.
That's right.
And I like that. I like, the sense of identity. I like the fact that I bring that sabor, to my station. And I always tell them that it's important to bring this whole aspect to the Anglo-speaking audience so that they can understand our issues. I made it my responsibility so that they can understand better what's happening in Cuba, what's happening in Venezuela, what should happen in Nicaragua, because it's kind of like, why should you care about this? Oh, let me tell you why, instead of just, this is the story.
Oh, absolutely. I think people want to be informed now more than ever. I think people really crave information, and we need to let Latinos know that they do have a voice.
And the other thing that is interesting, like you told me, there's a lot of Latinos who like to watch their news in English.
Yes, that's true too.
Yes, because there are other stories that I guess they're not interested in, yeah. But they're interested in anything that is happening local. And even though it may have that Latino niche, it's like, tell me the story in English.
But the Latino community, especially before they get warm and fuzzy, they need to kind of get to know you, right? How is the Latino audience different? You've done, English and Spanish, right? You've crossed over. How are those audiences different?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I've really looked at it like that, but I've had, even at the gym, I've run into people that come up to me and they say, I know they used to work in Spanish, but now I see you more because I watch you in English. And then, I always run into people, especially like among Nicaraguans. I was like, yes. Where are you now? I haven't seen you in a while.
What they don't know is that journalists move around a lot, right?
Yes,
especially in Spanish
exactly.
TV. You go from Univision to Telemundo, Univision to Telemundo.
You have your own story.
Yes, I do. I work for both stations as well. Communications is amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Ivan, it really opens a lot of doors for you.
I the older that I get, the more that I process that you know what, it's interesting that how our field opens up doors to something else. So if one day I consider doing something else, it's good to know that that option exists. Am I there yet? I'm not sure. I still like doing this. I still like telling stories. I still like to be out there in the community. I still like giving a voice to those who feel voiceless.
Especially in a market like South Florida, there's always
Especially.
something happening. But I think even for today's youth, it's important that they strengthen their communication skills because it really does help you in every aspect of your life.
Yes, and though social media has enabled a lot of people to get in front of a camera and talk, that doesn't mean they know how to do it.
That's right.
And I think that's what's been interesting about it. And I always tell them it's not a bad idea to take a communication course. It's not a bad idea to enhance what you're doing. Not that I'm criticizing what you're doing, I'm just saying polish it, do it better, because with that, respect comes along. Definitely, technology and social media has allowed other people to have a voice and to have an opinion, and that is, like I stated before, the difference of give me the other side of the story, and if you're telling me something, tell me what's the source. Tell me where are you getting that information from, and why should I believe it?
Right. Now we have so many people that are reporters themselves. I think the public feels almost a sense of duty to a certain extent. They see something happening. All of a sudden you see the phones popping up. That's both good and bad, right? Because rather than
Yes.
taking action, they're filming the thing. But does that make your job easier as a journalist or, for the station that they have all these like little micro journalists out there, or reporters, cameramen?
I try to look at the glass half full instead of half empty. And I say, yes, it's good. Now we have ring cameras.
Yes.
So
right.
surveillance video is everywhere. People have learned, though, now to be selective on what they want to share. And some people may have pulled out their phone and gotten the video, but that doesn't mean they're going to share it with you. So that's where we come along and we try to tell them, you want more, you want a greater audience, you want more people to see it, and you want the message to be clear, share that with the media. I like the fact that people have the ability to do it. I like the fact that there's ring video and we can now get that image. And I know some others would say, oh, now there's a camera everywhere and everyone's watching me, so I have to be careful.
There's that too.
You should be careful.
Always.
You should be careful, period.
We always say, you're always on. You're always
Yes,
on.
yes.
The mic is always hot. Right, Eva?
Judy knows it better.
Well, I want to go back to family because, one of the things that we always talk about in Sabor Freedom is freedom. The ability to do all the things that you want to do in this country if you work hard.
Yes.
Your dad arrived here at the age of 46 years old.
Yes.
And he had to start all over again. What did his rugged individualism, his ganas, teach you? Tell me a little bit about your dad.
I admire the fact that my dad had kind of like that Cuban mentality. My dad went to school here he went to Ohio State University where he studied agriculture, and he went back to Nicaragua. This is like the mid to late 1960s, and he did well. And then he decided to go on his own and have his own business. Until finally in the 1980s, he leaves because the Sandinista government was pressuring him to have to work with them or else he could end up locked up. So
Wow.
he left. He came here. He worked with his brother, my uncle, who had another business, but my dad missed what he was doing. And then he started working with nurseries in Homestead. And then he came to terms with the fact, I can do this.
Yes.
I speak English.
Yes.
I have a vision. I've already had a business, so I can do this. Why not? So my father, like a good immigrant, would go to work at 7 in the morning, would get out of work at around 4 o'clock, bought land, and started his own nursery, and would go and work till 10 o'clock at night. I saw my father come home, and there was a hole in the sole of his shoes, and he continued working. And he told my mom one day, I'm going to get you out of what you're doing. My mom, remember Hallmark?
Yes.
My mom used to go and put cards for Hallmark. That was
Oh,
one of the
yeah.
jobs that she did. She also worked
One
at
of the jobs.
one of the jobs. She
Yeah.
also worked at a flower shop.
Yeah.
When my mom passed, I remember there were ladies that came to the wake and they said, "I worked with your mother."
Oh,
And I was
yeah.
like, wow, thank you
Yes.
for making the time of being here. So my dad told my mother, one day I'm going to get you out of there, and you and I are going to work together again. And he did it. He had a vision. He set himself a goal, and for that reason, I respect him enormously.
This
It-
is obviously a core memory for you. You know, seeing your the shoe of your dad with,
Oh.
with a hole in it. That's something that stays with you. And how
Exactly.
did that impact you and your work ethic?
I felt jealous because I was like, I would like to do the same. I would like to have my own business. You know,
Yeah,
the problem,
yeah.
no, not the problem. The difference is that in our industry, it's a whole different ballgame.
Sure.
And my father respected what I was doing. He liked the fact that he became Ivan Taylor's dad. He said it one day jokingly, he said, "I lost my identity. Now I'm Ivan Taylor's dad." But he liked it. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed it because someone always had a story
Yeah.
to tell me. Tell your son to give me a call. Tell him that I want to talk to him because of this and this and that. So he was the proud father who would not say it as a good Latino, you know.
Yes.
He would probably not say it, but I know he felt like that. But to me, he's a leader. When people ask me who's one person that you admire, I admire my father.
Yeah.
I admire my dad because he came to this country, you know, with like nothing. I think he told me that when he left Nicaragua, he came with probably $11,000. This was in the 80s. But what do you do with that? It's gone like that,
Sure.
you know? And so he actually set himself a goal. It's like, you know, I work in a nursery and I can do this.
Right.
I can have my own business. And he bought a lot of land. His business grew. He then got another nursery with a partner. He managed to sell his own. So he retired comfortably. And now he works about 20 hours a week because he needs to be entertained.
That is the American dream right there, isn't it,
Totally.
Ivan? And you know, people say that the American dream is fading. What do you think about that?
I think when people say the American dream is fading, they look at it more like the ability to buy a house. Mm-hmm. That is the one part that I think they associate with the American dream being faded. Because the more that we notice people in the 80s and in the 90s, sometimes you could buy a house with one person's income.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
now it's like literally impossible.
Yeah.
And even though we hear about the interest rates fluctuating and that now it's the time and now it's not the time, you see so many people that they can't do it. I'll tell you what, you're going to laugh about this. So just when I was about to graduate, I worked at the Cheesecake Factory as a server. And I'm still friends with some people that I work with. And I remember two colleagues of mine, they bought houses with the money that they were making. Talk to a server right now and ask the server if he or she can buy a house. Impossible.
It is getting difficult, but I would say that there's no better place in the United States of America because this phenomenon of you know, people not able to, you know, people having financial, it's across the world. Mm-hmm. It's all over the world, and people still choose the United States of America. So we have to, you know, we have to have faith that there is the opportunity here to rise above all that, you know.
I still think that this is the most wonderful country.
Yes.
I am very grateful for the fact that they gave me the opportunity to be who I am. They gave me the opportunity of being Ivan Taylor and keep my identity.
Yes.
Not having to give up who I am. But this is the most wonderful country. Absolutely, without a doubt. I wish, indeed, more people would be able to attain that American dream
Right.
of being able to buy a house.
Let's shift over to your mamita right now, right? I know you once said that your career brought you to New Jersey and Houston, and then because of your mother's illness, it brought you back home.
Yes.
Here to South Florida. Looking back, was that one of the best decisions you ever made?
Yes. Absolutely.
Family
La
first.
familia. Because before my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and that was on June 26, 2015. Um, I kept saying, I kept talking. I had a group of friends first in New Jersey that they used to ask me, "Do you miss South Florida?" And I said, "I miss getting on a car." Because I used to live in North Bay Village. I said, I miss getting on a car,
Yeah.
driving half an hour, and seeing my mom and dad.
Yeah.
I miss family gatherings. I miss birthdays. Um, did I miss the food and all that? Yes, but the family.
Yes.
That is the foundation of us Latinos.
It really
That's
is.
the backbone of our lives.
It really
you
is.
know, and I missed it. So then I got a job offered in Texas because I always wanted to be a national correspondent. And then one day my sister called me and she gave me the news. And when she gave me the news, I came to terms with the fact that I'm not going to leave my mom's deceased over the phone. As it is, I experienced it a little. My sister would call me and she would say, "Oh, we're having a great day. We're on our way to therapy." And then another day she would be like, "We are running right now to the hospital because she started throwing up."
Wow.
And so I was like, there's absolutely no way I can live this over the phone and be so far. And I was very close to my mom. So I decided I try to negotiate at the time Telemundo. And I told them, I said, I need to come back to South Florida. So if you guys would enable me to allow me to continue doing what I'm doing, but in South Florida. And we could not reach a decision. I understood what they were trying to tell me. But then I came to terms with the fact that it's what I think it's necessary. And I resigned. I ended up being hired by Univision. I worked for Univision 6 years. I was a weekend anchor, and I was part of a unit of, I was doing consumer reporting too, besides regular assignments. And it was the best decision because I bought a house, I was close to my mom, and from that point on, which was 2016, every family celebration was held at my house. And the moments that I lived with my mother are simply priceless.
Yes.
Simply priceless. And I know that maybe career-wise I would be somewhere else, but I think I would have that whole guilt trip of not having been close to her.
And I'm sure she appreciated that too.
Oh,
Of course.
I mean, I was the son that I would always bring her flowers, and I would come in singing to her, "Te traigo estas flores porque no encontré palabras." And my mom would laugh and she'd say, "He's the only one who brings me flowers."
I love that.
So those things, you can only do them when you're close to mom and dad.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. And it's the least we could do, as children of parents that have given us so much
Yes.
opportunity, and they've worked so hard. I think the only thing that you really want is for the next generation to do better. And I think your parents achieved that,
I hope so.
As a journalist, I know you always ask the why, and you're very involved with the Nicaraguan community as a philanthropist. Just talk to me briefly about your service here to the Nicaraguan community and why you think it's so important that we do that.
I think it's important because I have felt that there is a need to put the lens over the Nicaraguan community. Just to give you a figure, in April of 2018, there was an uprising against the Ortega regime. And what triggered that uprising, and to put it in simple terms for everybody to understand, is that Ortega decided that elderly people's social security was going to be cut shorter because they were saying that the Social Security office was losing funds. Interestingly enough, when Ortega took over in 2007, there was a surplus on the Social Security system. Fast forward, and it was nearly bankrupt. So when that happened, a lot of young people went out to protest because Ortega reacted attacking older people that went out to protest, and young people were like, "You're attacking my grandparents." And that triggered a huge movement of protests, kind of like very similar to July 11th in Cuba. And we really thought that this was shaking the regime. Well, in order to summarize the whole story, Ortega repressed the nation. There was a huge exile. 12% of the population left the country in 2018. 12%. Most of them professionals, university students. So there was an exodus of what we call the future brains of the country.
Yes.
Those people came here. And one of the things that surprised me is I would sit down with them and hold a conversation, and they were bright. They were very smart. It wasn't like, and I'm not going to say typical, but it wasn't like any other immigrant that you talk to, and maybe for economic reasons they left. They could hold a conversation with you. They had established goals, and neither of them wanted to leave.
And they settled in Little Managua.
Many of them settled in Little Managua, in Sweetwater.
In
Some
Sweetwater,
of them scattered. So, but a lot of them ended up as political prisoners. So just recently, I mean, this weekend, they reached out to me and they said, we'd like you to help us out because we want to collect goods for Venezuela.
Yeah.
And we identified with the whole Venezuela cause. And plus, they told me, I thought it was interesting. They said, plus, Venezuela helped the Ortega regime, gave him money, gave him funds, and Ortega is totally quiet, hasn't said or done a thing. And we want to show that the Nicaraguan exiles in South Florida, we are doing something about it. I said, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm there.
It's important that we don't forget our roots, that we don't forget our heritage, and we help our people out. Ivan Taylor, you are an extraordinary example of, of being Latino. And I appreciate you as a colleague and as a friend.
Thank
and
you,
by the
Judy.
way, it is Ivan, not Ivan. I thought that was an
Ivan,
interesting story.
absolutely. Yes, indeed. Well, I strive to be like Judy and have my own show. This is amazing. This is awesome.
All right. Well, we're going to work on that. We're going to work on getting Ivan his show. You know, one of the things that I love to do here at Sabor Freedom is talk to people about meals or a dish that, that reminds you of home. What is your dish?
My God. Comfort food, right?
Yes, indeed.
Oh my God. I think ever since I used to work the night shift in media, and then I had like a harsh day. You know how people tell you, I need to go home and have a glass of wine.
Yes.
I need to go home or smoke a cigar. I was like, I'm going to go to the fritanga and I'm going to get me gallo pinto and maduros and I'm going to eat. It's always been comfort food. And even though as we get older, we try to watch what we eat and we try to cut on certain things.
It's so hard.
Gallo pinto is still comfort food. Gallo pinto, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar, is rice and beans. But it has like a special mixture. I believe it's pork oil or something like that. Not quite familiar. I know how to eat it. I don't know how to cook it. But I think every Latin American country has the same thing. Cubans have it, Venezuelans have it, Colombians have it. So in my case, it was gallo pinto, rice and beans, the plantains, the sweeter, the better. And I have to eat it with cheese. For some odd reason, I grew up eating maduros with cheese.
You got to have the fried cheese. I could live on maduros alone, so I understand completely what you're saying as a Cuban. And we're going to have Ivan's recipe online at saborafreedom.com. So check it out as we continue learning a little bit more about each other's cultures.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you,
I
Ivan.
greatly appreciate that.
I hope to see you soon.
Absolutely.
You're welcome here
Count on
anytime.
that.
Take care.